Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, May 9th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 114 days, the game against Michigan in 205 days. And as we are counting down the days to the season, we are finally at the point where you feel like most college football teams have more or less taken on their final forms. The spring portal window closed about a week ago. And now, as teams are sort of maybe taking on one or two final players to kind of round out their rosters, we wanted to take a look at who Ohio State might be looking at to potentially add to the 2024 Buckeyes and perhaps beyond. We're going to be doing that with our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, I guess before we really dive into this, let's just take a look at the portal overall in the post-spring window. And while it was crazy busy after the season during the December and January window, it feels like the post-spring window, just you didn't see as many guys in there, and you really didn't see as many really top level guys getting in there as maybe we were expecting.
Yeah, I think we were all waiting for the next wave. We saw a bunch of stuff happening after the season, and then you figured, well, once spring football is over, players figure out where they are. They've had more time to field offers and all of those sorts of things. And more chaos will just ensue because that is the nature of the game now. You just expect all kinds of craziness. And the craziness that happened was that, gosh, it just wasn't that crazy. And it's still not that crazy. And I still chalk up some of that to the fact that schools knew that some players were looking, for more and were able to come up with more. It's kind of some negotiations and things like that where the home school was able to meet the offer, meet the demand, keep a player home, keep a player happy. And I think when you've got a few months to do that, rather than the 2 weeks after the season, you can put together a better package or a more, you can do just a better job of negotiating and conversing with the players.
And there's probably also the guys who are maybe looking at the portal. You go through spring, and if you know a guy's looking at the portal, maybe you're giving him a few more opportunities to showcase himself in practice, and maybe he comes out of spring feeling a little bit better about his chances or his opportunities to play that fall. There's a lot of that, and it feels like the marketing piece of the keeping guys out of the portal is probably something coaches are thinking more about now than in previous years. But whatever the reason, definitely not quite as robust a portal group as we were thinking it could be going out of, heading into this spring portal window. There definitely are some spots on Ohio State's roster where they would have, been interested in adding someone and may still be interested in adding someone. Some of them are for this year. Some of them may be more focused down the line a little bit, because this is, as you may be aware, a pretty darn good Ohio State team, a very veteran Ohio State team. And there's a lot of spots where they've already added guys in the portal, and they've already had guys returning from last year's team. They didn't lose very many guys in the portal this spring either. So, they're not necessarily the bar to clear to be worth, worth adding to this year's team in terms of being a potential starter or even a potential rotation player is pretty darn high for the Buckeyes this year, which is one thing that may keep the pool of potential additions a little smaller than normal. But when you're looking at positions where they might be looking to add someone, I think we got to start at safety. And that's a spot where there have been a couple names that we've heard are potential additions for them. And nothing official yet, but guys who there has maybe been some communication with. And I don't think anyone here is necessarily someone we're talking about as, okay, they're looking to upgrade from Lathan Ransom or Caleb Downs or even Jordan Hancock if you want to lump him in with the safeties. But you're looking maybe at depth guys. They have lost a ton of safeties through the portal over the last year or so. So you may be just looking to sort of fill out your roster. Who are some of the guys they're looking at there, and where might they fit this year and beyond?
Yeah, I'm with you. The safety situation, there was talk of some conversation between Ohio State and Texas A&M transfer safety Jacoby Matthews a week or two ago, and I haven't really heard much about him with anybody at this point. But the name going around right now is Michigan State sophomore safety Jaden Mangum, or rather junior safety started last year 10 games as a sophomore, started 2 games as a true freshman in 2022, including the game against Ohio State. And so really that's the position that has been the busiest this spring for Ohio State. And like you said, you lose Cedric Hawkins, you lose Jihad Carter. I think you want to replace that veteran aspect and the veteran versatility of Jihad Carter, who had, a ton of starting experience, 3 years as a starter at Syracuse. Don't really know what you would have gotten out of him this year, but you had the potential for him to play. And I go back to the Youngstown State game last year where, it was Malik Hartford who got the start. And after about 2 series, it was determined Malik Hartford probably needs to come off the field and kind of got benched, and Jihad Carter was put in there. And that's what he can do. Maybe he's not winning a job, but at a moment's notice, you can put him out there. And so you lose that. You want to try to replace that. That's a very difficult thing to try and do, though, because when Jihad Carter came in from Syracuse last year, he was looking at battling for a starting job. That's not the case this year.
No, definitely not. And the bar to get on the field is just, this team is a substantially better team, I think, in a lot of spots, and a more veteran team than it was a year ago, which just means, that is all good news for Ohio State and their fans. Just means the bar to clear to get on the field and be someone who's worth adding is probably higher than it was a year ago. So that's safety. Another spot where I think a lot of people were thinking, and I certainly was thinking, they're at least going to take a peek in the portal and see if they might have someone who's worth adding this year, is the offensive line. This is another spot where the bar to clear to get to be worth adding this year is probably a lot higher than it was this time last year. This time last year, there was just shy of open panic among the Ohio State coaching staff about where the offensive line stood. This year, the baseline, I think, is a lot higher than it was a year ago. They've already added some talent through the portal during the winter portal window. And it just looking at the names in the portal, other than guys like Caden Proctor, who had a no contact tag because he was going to do the boomerang transfer from Alabama to Iowa back to Alabama, there just were not that many names in there that would represent an upgrade from what Ohio State seemingly already has.
Yeah, and you say take a peek at offensive line in the portal. I think they did more than that. They were looking. And there wasn't really anything there. And you look there now, and the names, you've got to go way down the rankings just to find somebody who's available. If you believe in the transfer portal rankings, all of these guys are taken because of the value that they have, and everybody's looking for offensive line because everybody loses offensive linemen. Guys hit the portal because it's been 3 years, and so now you've lost depth, or you've got guys that start for 2 or 3 years at a place that is smaller, and they bump up, and so it's the constant movement can just take away from you as well. But they're not out there for long, and right now they've all found their homes, and the music stopped a long time ago, and everybody has their chairs, and everybody is now locked in where they are. And there are no upgrades for Ohio State. Could you go get somebody for depth? Sure. Are you going to, cost somebody that should be playing or somebody that should be like, you're going to go get somebody. If you go get somebody, then that means, fewer snaps for like a, Taylor Shabola or George Fitzpatrick, somebody that is in the long-term plans. And so there's really no there for the offensive line at this point. There's certainly nobody that is like, if you get that guy, that is a starter on the offensive line. There's your fix at right tackle. Not that it needs fixed, but that's your right tackle so that Josh Fryer can go to right guard, or there's your right guard. There's nobody that is a better option than what they have at right guard with Luke Montgomery or Carson Hinsman or Seth McLaughlin or Taker Shabola or any of those guys. And there's nobody that is a better option at right tackle than Josh Fryer. So really, there's nothing there.
And I think if Ohio State fans want to know what the status of the transfer portal offensive line is this year, you got to look at some of the guys who left through the transfer portal for Ohio State. Enoch Vamahi, who left just a couple weeks ago during that spring portal window. And I think Ohio State fans, a lot of them kind of looked at the Cotton Bowl game and went, goodbye, see ya, peace. he was a contributor to Ohio State a little bit here and there. He ended up going to Washington. I think people were thinking, oh, maybe Hawaii, maybe somewhere in the Mountain West. No, he went to Washington, like literally the team that played in the national championship game last year. So, there are, if you are a transfer portal offensive lineman, boy, this is a seller's market right now because there is just not a lot of guys in there, and there's a lot of people shopping for offensive linemen. And I think the Buckeyes did potentially solve their biggest issue by bringing in Seth McLaughlin during that winter portal window. He feels like he has kind of solidified himself as the starting center, and that opens Carson Hinsman up to maybe solve that right guard spot. We'll see how that shakes out over the course of the spring and summer as they head into the fall camp era or fall camp time. There are a couple other spots where, they lost Dallin Hayden to the portal. Maybe they're looking for a running back. I think that's probably a pretty hard sell at this point. When you got Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, there are just not going to be that many carries available. And I don't know that I saw a great fit there. Wide receiver, they're a little thin there. But it feels like a lot of the places where they're looking to add someone, whether it's running back, wide receiver, maybe defensive tackle, they've already brought in a lot of talent. They brought in 6 transfers during that winter portal window. And to your point, I don't know that there's anything out there that represents a significant enough upgrade that it's worth bringing someone else in at this point.
Yeah, and you'd be putting somebody else on the bench who could use that playing time and do something with it. And you look at receiver, losing what they've lost. It's who's going to come in and be like, okay, I will fight to maybe I can be the 6th guy. It's, look what Julian Fleming did. He's like, I want to go be a top 2 receiver. And he gets to Penn State, and that sends John Parker Washington, or no, not him. That was a few years back, but the Keandre Lambert, maybe. So this domino effect, and you're asking a lot for a running back to look at Ohio State and be like, can I get past James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon to be the 3rd guy? And do I really want to do that, or can I go somewhere and start or be the 2nd guy? And so these rooms, the receiver room isn't overly deep. The running back room isn't overly deep, but it's too deep for a portal guy. And so that's the issue that they're running into. And I'd say the same thing about defensive tackle. They've got 2 guys that are established in Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams and a bunch of younger guys, but still, are you going to leave and come to Ohio State and fight through all of these Ohio State level recruits to try to become a backup defensive tackle? And the answer is generally no.
Yeah, there is certainly an appeal to being a part of this kind of a team where you're potentially a strong contender for the national championship. But if you're looking for playing time, there are probably easier paths to the playing field. And this is why you generally see a lot more guys transferring out from Ohio State than transferring in. This is definitely not Colorado. There are not 18 starting jobs open this year for Ohio State by any means, which is good news for Ohio State, but not necessarily great news if you're looking to come to play for Ohio State. Not an easy path to the playing field, but there is not a Jonah Jackson, it seems, out there on the offensive line this year. There's not even a Josh Simmons necessarily out there on the offensive line to come in and maybe be a multi-year starter. Could be. We'll see. We will continue monitoring the. Will they bring in a safety? That seems like probably the most likely spot. You might see someone come in, and that might be a multi-year. Not even necessarily a this year starter kind of move. So probably not quite as exciting a portal merry-go-round as we were anticipating for this spring. But when you have as many questions answered as Ohio State does, there are a lot of teams that are probably in much rougher shape without having a lot of guys in the portal right now that they could add. So probably pretty good news for Ohio State overall as far as those things go. So there's been plenty of other very good news for Ohio State over the last few weeks and months. And probably plenty more to come on the recruiting trail and much more. We are going to be following all of that for you. Of course, Mark and Kevin on the road for their Southern Swing right now. Lots of great content coming in from all over the South. They've been all through West Virginia and North Carolina and Alabama, their first ever time going to Alabama to talk to players. And Ohio State sort of broadening their recruiting net a little bit, which means the boys are broadening their trip. They'll be in Georgia and Florida and all over the South. over the coming days and weeks, you're going to want to get access to our huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. That is a members-only part of the website at BuckeyeHuddle.com. It's a great time to join because, of course, we are still running our annual subscription sale. Get access to the site for a full year for $69.99. It's like a 40% discount, give or take, from the typical price. Sign up now. Get access to the Southern Swing and all the other great content for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.